"Mum, Mum." The voice of my little boy was calling me out of my sleep. "Mum, I've had a nightmare. Dinosaurs are going to eat me." I threw back the covers and scooped him up and began to walk back to his bedroom. He'd seen Jurassic Park at a friend's house recently. I would have never let him see it because he's too young and he has Asperger's, so he's super literal. And instead of doing what I'd done in previous nights, just tucking him in, saying, "It's okay, dinosaurs aren't real, you're safe," I thought, I'm going to come at this another way. I said, "Do you know what? I think your body was trying to tell you something. What did you need to do when you woke up?" "Go to the toilet," he said. I said, "Yes, that's right. So next time you have a silly dream, don't worry about it. Just ask yourself, why is my body waking me up?" I got back into bed that night and my mind went boom. I had just instinctually uncovered a key insight into my life. The 12 years I struggled with addiction suddenly had new context. That evening was 2 years into my recovery, and there I was, 3:30 a.m, writing uncontrollably because I finally was able to articulate why my addiction no longer had any power or significance anymore. I wasn't asleep in my life, just going through the motions. I was now intentional and awake. The biggest shift I made in those 2 years was that I understood the importance of my well-being. Up until that evening, I hadn't even considered that my mind and body were trying to communicate to me. I saw my addiction only as the affirmation of personal flaws. I'd bought into completely the societal perception that struggle equals weakness. In framing my addiction in a negative context, shame takes hold. This is so counterproductive because it doesn't help people find answers other than "I am the problem." We have to realise that nobody screws up their life on purpose. It became clear to me early in my recovery that I didn't know much about myself. So I discovered a system to check in with myself each day. So I want you to imagine the 3 sides of an oxygen mask. All 3 sides are needed to seal firm around your face to ensure that you have good flow. The 3 sides of the wellbeing system rely on self-care, self-awareness and self-esteem. And like the oxygen mask, we need them to ensure that we have good flow. We need to practice daily self-care to ensure that our emotions and stress are in balance. We need to grow in self-awareness so that we can build on learning about ourselves and others through all circumstances, including struggles. And our self-esteem needs to be intact and grounded in truth and authenticity. The wellbeing system helped me to stay awake in my life. But life can interrupt our flow at any moment, on all sides. And instead of being educated to self-correct, we've become professionals at ignoring, distracting, and normalising harmful impacts to our wellbeing system. I hadn't noticed that I'd gone to sleep in my life. Overwhelmed by huge losses, I was leaking oxygen on all sides. My self-esteem had been impacted. I didn't properly understand my environment, and self-care wasn't even on my radar. So why didn't I know? Well, like most of you here, my education had focused primarily on academic intelligence. I didn't know that I was lacking in deep personal and emotional intelligence, now known as EQ. And without this knowledge, we just don't have all the skills and awareness necessary to navigate life and struggles successfully. And I'm not alone. We see it every day with the rise of addictions, mental health struggles, violence, crimes, and suicides. When I was 18, I didn't know I was in a harmful environment. After all, I was just at the club with my boyfriend, in a socially normalised environment, unaware I was playing a machine as intentionally designed to be as neurologically addictive as cocaine. I had no clue that my brain was being manipulated by the machine, tricked and deceived, like features like losses disguised as wins. This is where you bet $5 and the lights and sounds go off like you've won, but it's only $3. So it celebrates you losing $2 in a way that's registered in your brain as a win. So you just keep going and going and going. Understanding this fact through the research I've done helped me to comprehend the mental bewilderment that haunted me for over a decade. I loathed myself, and with each dollar I lost, fear and shame piled higher and higher until I just couldn't endure it anymore. I couldn't stand one more day of hearing the sounds of pokies in my mind and in my dreams. Driven by the regret of huge losses, I simply had no energy left to keep holding up a facade of I'm okay. But there was a tiny life inside of me, our miraculous sixth child. I couldn't figure out how to take my life and not hers, but I was so desperate for mental peace. I'd lost hope, and it had been removed in 3 ways. By me trying to get help numerous times and it not working, by me concealing my struggle and not being okay with being human, and by the futility of the once an addict, always an addict mentality. Now, all of you here would know someone who struggled with something. Look at that list again, and now try and see them through eyes of compassion. The first time I sought help was in 2003, and I was told by the Lifeline operator, just don't wear shoes. If you don't wear shoes, well, you won't be able to get into a venue, so you won't be able to gamble. My life without shoes. This is a solution. Next was face-to-face counselling, where I was shown this, the cycle of addiction. It looks like a whirlpool, doesn't it? Have you ever done that in a backyard swimming pool, just swim round and round? Well, pretty soon you don't have to swim at all because the momentum just carries you round. And the momentum that fuels this is fear, shame, and regret, and the way society judges. Dr. Gabor Mate talks about trauma and how it leads to addiction. And I agree. But there's a second kind of addiction that is not properly understood. A second kind of trauma that's not properly understood. I call it the trauma of after. This is where people fall victim to societal entrapment of modern addictions by design. Socially intentional environments and products that, from predatory industries that we have socially normalised that harm our well-being. We fail to understand the moment that when we do something reckless and impulsive outside of our core beliefs, that impact causes a fracture. I call it the fracture of self. And people are then haunted by that shame. It breaks my heart when people refer to themselves by labels. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a gambler. I'm an addict. I gently correct them and try and reconnect them to ensure that they never forget that to err is human. People say to me, "You're so brave for sharing your story." Why? Because whilst we continue to equate sharing vulnerably with bravery, we unconsciously allow so much space for stigma and shame to thrive. We're fundamentally afraid of our humanity, desperate to conceal it at all costs, and I know because I almost paid the ultimate price. People think that successful recovery is that you've stopped whatever it is. Well, I had periods of stopping over the years, but I still wasn't okay because I thought that the mistakes that I had made had disqualified me from ever being whole again or worthy of a normal life. That unconscious oppression, the burden of recovery, kept me swirling around the whirlpool. What followed that point of despair in 2012 was a journey that I didn't expect. In fact, I didn't even think it was possible. But as the baby inside me grew, I too grew in knowledge about learning about myself and all that was at play. It was the beginning of the rebuilding of me in every way. I curiously dived into the research and learning because I couldn't shake the thought of if it happened to me, I knew it was happening to others. Right now, 8 Australians a day take their life and nearly 800,000 globally each year. But how could I shift the hopelessness that was now so visible all around me? The decision to share my story was not easy, and I naively thought that the gambling industry might not know of the harm that they cause. Well, my eyes are wide open now. I realised that they knew. Long before I ever walked into a club, they knew. And they had no intention then or now to reduce those harms, to protect people. And both sides of government have allowed the industry to multiply and flourish for decades. Understanding this fact devastated me. My personal advocacy has been a light for many, but it goes way beyond this space because gambling was only my journey through pain. The non-profit organisation I founded called the Hope Project focuses on the prevention of all struggles by humanising it and bridging the gap in EQ education and highlighting the importance of sustainable mental health. I've been fortunate to work with change makers and future-focused organisations because they've allowed me to equip and facilitate vulnerable conversations, both here and abroad. And until we start having them, then people stay only at surface level, hiding inside of themselves. We've changed the vernacular of addiction from negative to positive, from what's wrong with me to what do I need to learn about myself or my environment. We've changed the system of the whirlpool of shame to a linear system of understanding well-being first and move along pathways to grow through struggle. Because struggle is just an opportunity to come awake and pay attention in our world and not be defined by it. Because struggle is actually an invitation to just come awake and pay closer attention. And identifying overwhelm as the thief of passion and purpose. It's so important in our society because we hear it. I'm overwhelmed at work. I'm overwhelmed at school. I'm overwhelmed with the kids. Overwhelm is the thief of passion and purpose, and it creates apathy, and it is the precursor to addiction and mental health struggles. We have to start listening to what our minds and bodies are saying. And I created this little tool to equip a better conversation that you can have with yourself or with another. AWAKE is the acronym that helps you to identify what area of blindness you're experiencing. What am I not aware of? What do I need? Am I being authentic? Am I keeping my eyes forward? And am I being mindful every day? And on the back, the senses acronym helps you to identify what emotions driving your behaviour. It's so easy for us to get caught up in our world, but we need to check in with ourselves daily and be the protectors of our well-being. It's my hope that one day soon, AWAKE will be just normal, everyday vernacular, used to equip simple knowledge with concepts that right now people don't even talk about. I believe a fresh perspective, constructive conversations, and new skills in awareness, we can break the tide of hopelessness and claw back a society that is addiction-proof.